Hey everybody, Chris Sowers here. I am a writer, writing coach, editor, book layout person, et cetera, et cetera. And today we're going to do a live review of a piece that was submitted to one of my Medium publications, specifically to tell your story. So here we go. Share my screen, and you should be seeing Tell Your Story. This is my publication. There's the address up in the URL bar up there. Yeah, if you want to contribute to Tell Your Story, or just read it, whatever you'd like to do, I'm going to put a link to it in the notes to this video, and also show you how to include a link for how to be a contributor and submit as well. All right, so here's a story that was submitted recently, and I do have the author's permission to do this live review. I have read this piece. It's been a couple of weeks because I want this to be as fresh and live as possible. I read it already just to make sure it would be appropriate to do on a video like this, and it is. And again, I have the author's permission. This one is called Always Shake Out the Baby Blanket Before You Head Out the Door. Okay, a cautionary tale. You can tell already there's some issues here. The title looks good. I don't know what's going on here. I think that is intended to be a subtitle, and you can use the subtitle feature in Medium. Let me just show you that real quick. And then there's this weird space here. Let's get rid of that. And that makes a cautionary tale a subtitle. There's some capitalization stuff going on here. I think we either need to capitalize cautionary or not capitalize tale. So I'm going to do a bit of live editing here as we go through this. All right, so here we go. Author has already included a picture, so we're starting to get a feel for what this piece might be about, aren't we? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this live and just give kind of live reactions and feedback as we go. All right, it was perhaps my most embarrassing moment to date at the time. A moment so embarrassing it brought back high school in all its agonizing glory. A time replete with mortifying sanitary pad incidents, wardrobe malfunctions, and painfully apparent longing for the girl who sat ahead of me in French class. Okay, so typically, and Tell Your Story focuses on creative nonfiction, and I specifically prefer narrative creative nonfiction, personal essays, and this is a personal essay, as we can already tell. Typically, I don't like a bunch of context up front, like going to set the scene. It was my most embarrassing moment. This is okay. This is okay because I like the specificity in it. Mortifying sanitary pad incidents, wardrobe malfunctions, painfully apparent longing for the girl who sat ahead of me in French class. Okay, that stuff is specific enough that I would probably leave this paragraph in. But typically, I like you to just get to the story. Just, let the context unfold as you tell the story. In this case, we're getting some context, and it's okay. It's fine. I don't know what painfully apparent longing means. The word apparent there doesn't really work. Painfully apparent. So does that mean, I guess my feedback here is I have to think about that too much. And while I'm thinking about that, what that means as the reader, I'm losing the story. Again, just some Medium formatting stuff. There's a lot of spacing in this piece. It doesn't really work in Medium. When you hit enter into paragraph, it inserts a line like in it. It'll look like this. So I'm going to get rid of those as we go. Those are just extra spaces we don't need. All right. I was a blushing mess of a mom because of my thong underwear. Okay, so we're back now to the most embarrassing moment to date at the time. I was a blushing mess of a mom because of my thong underwear. All right, brilliant. Now, I would like this piece even more if this was the beginning. If the start was just that line. Now you've got us hooked. You don't need to tell us it was your most embarrassing moment to date. you can just let that unfold, right? We're gonna get the point as we read. So I would love for this to be the beginning of this essay. There's also some weird spacing going on at the beginning of each paragraph that's throwing me off. I'm going to get rid of those as we go too. All right, I was a blushing mess of a mom because of my thong underwear. Nowadays, thong underwear has been both ubiquitous and passe, and is now an unfortunate aspect of the return to the 90s fad. But I had been wearing them long before the 90s, when one could routinely see the waistband of a thong rising above a woman's low-slung jeans as she bent over to pick up a pacifier. Okay, that's funny. That is very funny. I get tripped up at the beginning of this paragraph. Nowadays, thong underwear has been both as so there's something going on with tense here that doesn't work. Has been should probably be is. Nowadays, thong underwear is both ubiquitous and passe. I'm going to go ahead and make that simple change. And I guess ubiquitous, I don't really know what ubiquitous means. I think it means like ever present, everywhere, and passe. And is now an unfortunate aspect. Okay, there's a little social commentary here that we could probably get rid of. Like, okay, let's tone this down again. We certainly don't need the word now in there. We've already said nowadays. Nowadays, thong underwear is both ubiquitous and passe. Full stop. But I've been wearing them long before the 90s. That could work. I'd rather trim this a little bit. It is now an unfortunate aspect. Like, why is it unfortunate? I don't like, that's my question when I read that. Why is it unfortunate? It's now an unfortunate aspect. So I'd probably trim this phrase a little bit. We don't need all of that social commentary. But I'd been wearing them long before the 90s, when one could routinely see the waistband of a thong rising above a woman's low-slung jeans as she bent over to pick up a pacifier. That is brilliant. I love that. And it's so specific and a perfect example of showing, not telling. You've probably heard that phrase before. You can see the waistband of a thong rising above a woman's low-slung jeans as she bent over to pick up a pacifier. Perfect. Think of how you could have told that same concept, right? Telling would have been, even moms were wearing thong underwear, but the imagery there and the specificity of it's just terrific writing. Okay. It was an innocent time, but I'd been wearing them long before the 90s. It was an innocent time, but I was not so innocent, which is where the thong underwear came in. Okay, it was an innocent time. So she's referring to well before the 90s when she wore thong underwear. The author wore thong underwear. But I was not so innocent, which is where the thong underwear came in. Okay, intriguing. Once upon a time, I was an undergraduate in women's studies, fervently writing letters to the college paper, identifying myself as as a radical lesbian feminist. I was dedicated to changing the world, one ideology and pronoun at a time. It's just fantastic. What a great paragraph. I love the once upon a time, fervently writing letters to the college paper, dedicated to changing the world, one ideology and pronoun at a time. It's just great. Terrific paragraph. Showing, not telling, right? Because of the specific details that she includes. Despite being a budding ideologue, I was young, had rhythm, and realized I'd rather spend time dancing against brick walls and bars and discussing semantics with women who took themselves way too seriously and thought bars were for bores and didn't shave anything. I was a bit judgy about that then. Okay, again, specific, fantastic. There's a little issue with this phrase right here, I think. I know what the author's saying, and I'm going to show you who the author is, by the way. Is it on? No, I'll have to, I'll show you at the end of the video, because it'd be great if you would follow her and clap for her work and all of that stuff. She's a really good writer. She's been in Tell Your Story before. Okay, so bars were for bores and didn't shave anything. So and didn't shave everything, I think is semantically referring to the bars. Okay, we know what the author means, that these women discussing semantics with women who took themselves way too seriously, are the ones who don't shave anything. But the way this is phrased, this phrase here, didn't shave anything, is literally referring to bars. So it needs, I would rework this. I'd rather spend time dancing against brick walls in bars than discussing semantics with women who took themselves way too seriously, comma, didn't shave anything, comma, and thought bars were for bores. And maybe, in this parenthetical phrase needs to stick with didn't shave anything as well. Okay. Little issue, not a big deal. I'm not going to fix it. I'll let the writer fix that however they want to. It was while undulating against those brick walls that I started to meet all these erotic dancers who took things as they came and shaved. Fantastic. And shaved everything. And well, when in Rome, G-strings were de rigueur and hip in that crowd. And hey, none of those nasty panty lines. Really well done. Because who needs panty lines? I like that. Simple, one sentence. I like how I'm just going to show you who this writer is. Okay, they've been on Tell Your Story before. It's Berengaria. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Beren, if I'm not, I apologize. But this is her. Let's go to her profile real quick. Their profile real quick. I'm not sure of Beren's pronouns. Okay. So again, give them a follow, please. All right. Because who needs panty lines? That was back in one thing that I really like that Beren does is like a big long sentence like that. Look at that. That's one sentence. This paragraph here, one sentence. But then what they'll do is hit you with something short and give you kind of a break. That's a really nice technique for your readers. Long sentence and then hit them with a short one like that. That's kind of punchy and funny. And that works really well. And now look, we're going to get another really long sentence. Okay. So when you find yourself doing this, long sentence, long sentence, long sentence, throw in a short one just to give your readers a break, change up the pace a little bit, keep them interested. That was back in 1986 when I dared to be different. 17 years, a Labrador retriever, a wife and 3 kids later, thanks to my future wife witnessing me dancing against the brick wall, the missionary man by the Eurythmics, I was still wearing thong underwear. So I'd gone from the ever so irritating lace models to the more modern ones that smack of respectability. Again, what a fantastic paragraph. It's just one sentence, but Beren does a good job of breaking it up. Again, specific, right? A Labrador retriever is so much better and than a dog. Listen to the difference. That was back in 1986 when I dared to be different. 17 years, a dog, a wife and 3 kids later. Okay, now listen. That was back in 1986 when I dared to be different. 17 years, a Labrador retriever, a wife and 3 kids later. It just specific works so much better than general, than generic. Fantastic paragraph, smacked of respectability. I love that phrase. At 38, while I still cared more about having a cute butt than about comfort, real simple thing here. I'd probably use numbers there. No big deal, but I'm going to leave it. At 38, while I still cared more about having a cute butt than about comfort, I didn't necessarily want to advertise the fact. Though I did ask our midwife, between contractions during the birth of our 3rd child, whether I'd ever be able to wear thong underwear again because of the dang hemorrhoids I developed during pregnancy. Here, Beren does it again with that, right? Long, elegant sentence, kind of tough to read, a little uncomfortable, and then Beren hits you with a short, punchy question like that. Really well done. Beyond expressing surprise that this hadn't happened with either previous pregnancy, she was making no promises. Okay, we're referring to the midwife now. And though she tried to keep her opinion to herself, she was clearly not a member of the no painting mindset any press club. Uh, again, terrific showing instead of telling. Beren could have just said, um, well, I'm just going to move on there. I like how she handled that. The midwife, a good friend, also confessed to being so sensitive to texture she had to buy seamless socks, or she spent the entire day thinking, sock seam, sock seam. My wife suggested that if she tried thong underwear, all she'd be able to think was butt crack all day. Okay, it's funny. It bothers me a little bit that we're just now discovering that the midwife is a good friend. I think I'd rather know that up here. It sort of changes the dynamic, right? Knowing that this is a good friend. And then if she's a good friend here, why are you just learning? It seems like you're just learning in that moment. I'm sorry, it seems like Beren is just learning in that moment that the midwife is not into thong underwear. Well, if they were good friends, would Beren have an idea of that already? Or maybe even know that already? So anyway, this good friend here is throwing me off. I love this paragraph. I think if we moved good friend up to where we first mentioned the midwife, that would make it work a little better. I feel like we should know that earlier. Okay. On the day of the aforementioned mortifying incident. Okay, so now we're back to the most embarrassing. So actually, I'm going to go back on what I said about context in the beginning because Beren sets this whole thing up for this most embarrassing moment ever, and then we get all of this backstory, right? And we still haven't gotten to the most embarrassing moment ever. So I actually like how she does this up in this first paragraph. I said before, I didn't like this context. Now that I'm further into the piece, I think I'm changing my mind. On the day of the aforementioned mortifying incident, I was 3 months postpartum, back to normal more or less, and running to take our 8-year-old daughter to school. We were late. There wasn't even enough time to whisk the baby out of his safety apparatus if we wanted to beat the bell. So I was jogging up the sidewalk, the baby kicking his blanket with every jolt of the car seat bouncing against my thigh. It's terrific. It's starting with on the day of the aforementioned mortifying incident. It's just the imagery, the detail. Beren is putting us right there with her. I can see this. Like as I read it, I see her running up the steps, like car seat bouncing against her leg. Really well done. Happily, we made it into the classroom on time. I don't know why that matters yet. Happily, not only because one should get one's child to school on time, but because our children are punctuality nuts and fall apart over social solecisms like tardiness. That day, our daughter didn't have to fall apart, and I didn't have to peel her off my leg like a hastily applied sticker. I don't know why that matters. That's why I'm pausing. I don't know. I don't know why this matters. It's almost extraneous details that distract us from the rest of the narrative. I'd be okay with it, but I'd almost rather Beren just continue what was happening in the above paragraph. You know, we ran down the hall. I guess I'm thinking show us that you were on time rather than just telling us. So you're running down the hall, you get into the classroom just as the other parents and kids are walking in and the bell rings, or something like that is what I'd rather have there. It was then that the teacher, a mild-mannered man who goes by Alan M., like Josie's boyfriend, the cutest boy in Riverdale from Josie and the Pussycats comics of the 70s, clears his throat, holds up something between two fingers and says to me, "Did you drop this?" Okay, something's bothering me here about the tense. You see what I'm saying? It was then that the teacher, a mild-mannered man who goes by Alan M., clears his throat, holds up something. So now we're kicked into present tense. Does it stay present tense? I look up, time stands still. I consider dying on the spot. Yeah, Beren sticks with present tense. Whereas before, see, everything was past tense. We were late. We made it on time. I was running to take our 8-year-old daughter to school. So it needs to be consistent tense. And so I think this needs to go to past tense, everything from this point down. So it was then that the teacher, a mild-mannered man who goes by Alan M., cleared his throat, held up something between two fingers and said to me, "Did you drop this?" I think from here on, they need to rewrite this so that it's past tense. I do like this kind of throw aside parenthetical detail here. It won't mean anything to people that don't know Josie and the Pussycats, but it kind of anchors Beren in time, and it's a reminder of the setting of this piece. So I actually do like it, even though it's an extraneous detail that doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm going to read the rest of it in present tense because that's how it's written, but I hope that Beren will change this. I look up, time stands still. I consider dying on the spot. He's holding up a pair of my thong underwear that had been clinging statically to the baby's blanket and dropped on the second grade classroom floor amid the circulating slip-on shoes of a dozen mothers and even more 7-year-olds. Yeah, that's terrific. Clinging statically bothers me. I get it. It's static cling. That's what happens. It's just, that's not a very common phrase. Actually, I changed my mind. I like it. I like it. Clinging statically. It's unique. Let's leave it. In a split second, I calculate my options. Number one, cop to the undies, laugh self-deprecatingly, and stuff them in my bag as I shoot out the door. Number two, look vaguely about as if perhaps they're mine. I'm not really sure. There's so much lingerie littering up. Obviously, I like that. And I like it after the first option too. Like the first option is we could see that being an option. That's clearly reasonable. And then number two is kind of ridiculous and funny. And the phrase lingerie littering up the joint. It's terrific. Point to any other mother in the room and suggest it belongs to her. Also quite funny. Just randomly blame someone else. So this is really well done. I love the options. We're right there in Beren's head as she's experiencing this. I see why she went present tense because that puts us right there. So Beren may want to change the beginning of this part to present tense. So there, how would they do that? There I am. It's the day of the aforementioned mortifying incident. period. I'm 3 months postpartum, back to normal, more or less, and running to take our 8-year-old daughter to school. We're late. We are late. We're late. There isn't even enough time to whisk the baby out of his seat. See how Beren could do it that way. Because this in present tense works really well, because we're right there in Beren's head. We're experiencing this as they experience it. Well, normally I'm an excessively honest person, too honest, in fact, for my own good. That day I imagined, okay, now we slip back into past tense. So the tense just needs to be consistent. Whether it's present or past, it needs to be consistent throughout this whole vignette piece of the story. That day, I imagined my carefully crafted facade of wholesome middle-class motherhood crumbling in an instant. All the blending in, the years of after-school chit-chat, and overcompensating Carol Brady's sweetness on the playground going to waste. Again, it anchors it in time. Carol Brady, if you know the reference, that makes this very funny. So I looked this gentle soul straight in the eye and said, no. So she's answering the question, did you drop this? And I think I would like this story in present tense the more I read. So Beren, be consistent with the tense. I think present works better. At this point, my daughter's teacher begins to realize just what he is holding. As I turn away to adjust the baby's fresh out of the dryer blanket to hide my crimson face, Alan M. mumbles something about putting it in a bag back here and quickly makes off with the offending item. So again, you're noticing this, right? We're back in present. And I think, will I ever be able to look him in the face again? Will he ever be able to look at me without thinking, long underwear? Her? There are 3 upsides to this situation as I see it. Number 1, our daughter was focusing on pulling her homework out of her backpack at the time, so she didn't know it was my underwear her beloved teacher was holding up like something for show and tell. Show and tell is fantastic, because we're clearly in a show and tell type of setting. Number 2, it is something I can chuckle about in my rocking chair years from now, and believe me, I'm saving up stories for when I'm more likely to be wearing an adult diaper than a strip of stretch lace against my booty. Funny. That teacher has a story he can dine out on for the rest of his days. I'm betting laughter rang out in the teacher's lounge that lunchtime, and considering how hard teachers work, I can't begrudge them a laugh. The loss of a thong is a small price to pay. Yeah, I like the ending here. It's clever. It's unique. You don't see pieces end like this that often. It does feel me wanting a little bit of closure, but I like it, and I wouldn't change that ending. Okay, so that's it, Beren. I love the story, and with a few revisions, it's going to find its way right onto the front page of Tell Your Story, with the other great pieces that are on there. All right, thanks everyone. Notes and details will be in the notes section of this on YouTube. Thanks for watching.